Aarushi Mehta had always believed she was living the American dream. After moving from Mumbai to California with her husband, Rohan, she had worked hard to build a life filled with stability, love, and success. Their friends often called them the power couple, admired for their discipline, charm, and partnership. To everyone around them, Aarushi and Rohan were the perfect blend of tradition and modernity, a couple who had achieved everything. But perfection, Aarushi learned, is often the most fragile illusion. One Friday afternoon, Rohan left his laptop open before heading to the gym. Aarushi wasn't the kind of person who snooped, but a message notification popped up at the corner of the screen. It was a heart emoji, followed by the words, "Last night was worth the risk." The sender's name, Elena, was instantly familiar. She worked at Rohan's company and had been to their home more than once. Aarushi's hands trembled, but her face remained calm. She opened the messages, and within minutes, her marriage unraveled before her eyes. Photos, messages, and plans, everything she needed to know was right there. The man she trusted most had betrayed her. That night, she served dinner as usual. She smiled, asked about his day, and laughed when he told his usual office stories. Inside, though, she was already making plans. There would be no confrontation, no tears. Aarushi had always been rational, and now her logic took over. In the days that followed, she gathered everything: screenshots of messages, bank statements showing unexplained withdrawals, and even travel receipts for secret weekend trips. She learned that Rohan and Elena were planning to move to Seattle, using money from their joint savings. The betrayal wasn't just emotional, it was financial and calculated. Aarushi's revenge began quietly. She consulted a lawyer, learned her rights, and began moving her money into a separate account. She pretended to be the same loving wife, but every word, every smile, was part of a greater plan. By the end of the week, she invited Rohan's colleagues, including Elena, to a celebration dinner. Rohan believed she was throwing the party to honor his upcoming promotion. He praised her thoughtfulness, completely unaware that it would be the night his double life came crashing down. The dinner was perfect: candlelight, fine wine, laughter, and music. As dessert was served, Aarushi announced a short slideshow to celebrate Rohan's achievements. The guests clapped. The first few slides showed vacation pictures, family events, and happy moments. Then the screen changed. Text messages appeared, followed by photos of Rohan and Elena together, smiling intimately. The room fell silent. Guests looked around in disbelief as Rohan's face drained of color. Elena's fork dropped onto her plate. Aarushi didn't flinch. When the last slide faded, she simply thanked everyone for coming and walked out. Within days, Rohan lost his promotion, his reputation, and his marriage. Aarushi filed for divorce, secured her finances, and refused to engage with him again. She didn't need to shout or destroy him further, the truth had already done that. Her revenge wasn't about hatred. It was about reclaiming power. By staying silent, calm, and dignified, Aarushi showed that true strength lies not in rage, but in grace. The weeks after the dinner party unfolded like a storm moving through calm water. Rohan's world was falling apart while Aarushi's was being quietly rebuilt from the inside out. Word about the disastrous evening spread quickly through their social circle and workplace. What had once been whispers of admiration for the perfect couple turned into hushed gossip about the scandal that had left everyone stunned. Rohan's reputation, carefully crafted over years, had collapsed in a single night. The same people who once praised him now avoided his gaze in meetings, their polite smiles replaced by judgment and pity. Elena disappeared from the office soon after, resigning without notice. Rohan tried to carry on, but every hallway, every conversation, reminded him of what he had lost. Aarushi, meanwhile, moved through the chaos with remarkable calm. She had already anticipated the fallout, and she had no interest in watching it unfold. Her focus was her own survival, emotional, financial, and psychological. She stopped wearing her wedding ring, packed Rohan's belongings neatly into boxes, and stored them in the garage. The house felt lighter without his presence. She filled her evenings with quiet walks, soft music, and new beginnings. The silence that once felt painful now brought peace. It was a silence that came from strength, not emptiness. She spent her days finalizing legal paperwork, ensuring every detail was handled with precision. Her lawyer admired her composure. Many expected her to break down, but Aarushi's emotions were locked away behind a wall of determination. She understood that power, once lost, could only be reclaimed through control. She learned to navigate the legal system efficiently, making sure every account, property, and investment was protected. There was no hesitation, no doubt. The woman who had once devoted herself to love was now devoted to justice. One morning, she visited her favorite coffee shop near the bay, a place she had avoided since everything happened. As she watched the water shimmer under the sunlight, she realized she felt something unexpected: freedom. For the first time in years, her thoughts were her own. There were no secrets to uncover, no lies to decode, no performances to maintain. She could breathe again. That realization marked the true beginning of her healing. Rohan, on the other hand, began to unravel. His attempts to contact her grew desperate. He left messages apologizing, begging for a second chance, blaming stress, and finally resorting to self-pity. Aarushi never replied. She had nothing left to say. Every unanswered message was its own form of closure. The power had shifted completely. The man who once believed he could deceive her without consequence now stood stripped of everything that gave him confidence: his image, his career, and his pride. Months later, Aarushi signed the final divorce papers and walked out of the courthouse with quiet satisfaction. She didn't smile or cry. She simply felt at peace. Revenge had never been her goal. What she sought, and found, was balance. She had taken back her life, her dignity, and her voice without ever raising it. Her victory was silent, but it was absolute. Aarushi's new life began slowly, like the first rays of dawn after a long storm. She moved into a modern apartment overlooking the San Francisco Bay, a smaller space, but entirely her own. There were no reminders of Rohan, no shadows of the past, only peace. The walls were white, the air smelled of fresh paint and possibility, and for the first time in years, she slept soundly through the night. Each morning, she brewed her coffee, watched the sunrise from her balcony, and felt a calm strength growing within her. She had learned that revenge wasn't a single act, it was a journey that ended when pain no longer had power over her. Her professional life began to flourish in ways she had never expected. The attention surrounding her story, though uninvited, had given her name a quiet recognition. Without intending to, Aarushi had become a symbol of dignity and intelligence. Women from across the community began reaching out to her privately: wives, professionals, even students, all sharing their own experiences of betrayal, heartbreak, and confusion. Aarushi listened, offered guidance, and realized that her story could help others rebuild their own strength. What started as casual conversations soon evolved into something more meaningful. Aarushi decided to launch a small consulting business that focused on empowering women through financial independence and emotional recovery. Her background in data analysis gave her a sharp sense of structure, and her experience gave her empathy. She began organizing workshops and online seminars, teaching women how to secure themselves legally and financially. Her calm confidence drew attention, and within months, her sessions were fully booked. Success came quietly, built not on revenge, but on renewal. Rohan, meanwhile, had become a ghost of his former self. Stripped of his promotion and the respect of his colleagues, he tried to start over in another city but carried his shame with him. Mutual friends told Aarushi that he often spoke of regret, that he admitted losing the best thing in his life. But Aarushi never looked back. Regret could not undo. Deception and forgiveness did not require reconciliation. She understood that closure was not something anyone could give her, it was something she had to create for herself. Every Sunday evening, she lit a small candle on her balcony and reflected on her journey. The woman who once felt broken now stood unshaken. The humiliation that was meant to destroy her had instead transformed her into someone unrecognizable, someone powerful, fearless, and whole. She no longer needed validation or vengeance. Her silence had spoken louder than any confrontation ever could. Months turned into a year, and Aarushi's story quietly spread across the internet. Blogs, podcasts, and even local news featured her as the woman who turned betrayal into empowerment. She never sought fame, yet it found her naturally. The public called her a symbol of grace. She saw herself simply as someone who refused to be defeated. Her revenge, in the end, was not in ruining her husband's life, but in rebuilding her own so beautifully that his absence no longer mattered. Aarushi's consulting business grew faster than she had imagined. What started as a small online initiative soon became a structured organization called Project Shakti, dedicated to helping women facing betrayal, divorce, and emotional trauma. She rented a modest office space in downtown San Jose, painted it in warm tones, and filled it with plants and soft lights. The space felt alive, welcoming, healing, and filled with purpose. Every morning when she walked in, she felt proud of what she had created. She wasn't just rebuilding her life anymore, she was transforming the lives of others. Her days were filled with calls, meetings, and workshops. Women arrived at her office feeling broken, uncertain, and afraid of starting over. Aarushi would listen, patient and calm, before showing them practical ways to regain control, opening separate bank accounts, finding legal support, and setting emotional boundaries. She taught them that silence could be more powerful than confrontation and that healing didn't have to mean forgetting. Her approach was gentle but firm, and her story gave her words undeniable credibility. The women left her office not just with plans, but with hope. Slowly, Aarushi's name began circulating beyond her local community. She was invited to speak at conferences about resilience and independence. Her speeches were simple but deeply moving. She spoke about trust, self-respect, and the strength hidden inside every woman who refuses to stay broken. The audience often stood in long applause, moved by her quiet grace. She never mentioned Rohan's name or the scandal. She didn't need to. Her story had already spoken for itself, and the power it carried came from the fact that she had risen above bitterness. Despite the new success, Aarushi remained grounded. She avoided the spotlight whenever she could, preferring to focus on meaningful work rather than attention. She still lived alone, still kept her routine simple, and still found peace in solitude. In the evenings, she took long walks by the water, reflecting on how far she had come. There were moments when she thought about the past, not with anger, but with gratitude. It had taught her resilience she never knew she had. Rohan's shadow occasionally tried to re-enter her life. He sent a few letters, filled with remorse and nostalgia, but Aarushi never responded. She didn't hate him anymore, she simply had no space for him in her world. His actions had been the catalyst for her transformation, but he no longer had any power over her. The person she once loved existed only in her memories, and even those were fading. One evening, after finishing a workshop, she stood by her office window and looked out at the city lights. The reflection in the glass showed a woman who had faced destruction and turned it into destiny. The pain that once defined her had become her greatest source of strength. She realized her revenge had taken its purest form, not in ruining another's life, but in reclaiming her own with purpose and pride. The documentary team reached out to Aarushi a year after her story had quietly transformed into an online phenomenon. They had heard fragments of her journey, the dinner party, the calm exposure, the rebuilding, and wanted to tell it on a larger platform. At first, she refused. She had no desire to revisit her pain or become entertainment for others. But when she learned that the project aimed to inspire women facing similar situations, she agreed on one condition: her story would focus on strength, not scandal. The producers accepted, and filming began in her new office, where walls were lined with photos from her seminars and letters from women she had helped. The crew followed her through her daily routine, preparing presentations, guiding clients, and managing Project Shakti. They asked her to retrace her steps, to speak about the night she discovered the betrayal and how she stayed composed. She didn't dramatize it. Her words were measured, her tone steady. She explained how revenge didn't have to destroy lives, how intelligence and patience could create justice far more effectively than rage. Viewers would later say that her calm expression in those interviews said more than any tear ever could. When the documentary aired, titled Indian American Wife's Shocking Revenge on Cheating Husband and Mistress After 1 Week, USA, it went viral within days. Millions watched, captivated not by the scandal but by the transformation. Social media filled with praise for her grace and control. Women around the world wrote to her, saying her story gave them courage to take control of their own lives. Men, too, commented, acknowledging the strength it took to respond with dignity rather than destruction. Aarushi watched it only once, in silence, with a single candle burning beside her. When it ended, she felt no pride, no sadness, just closure. Her truth had been told, and now it belonged to the world. In the months that followed, her influence grew. She was invited to speak at universities and cultural events across the country. Her talks focused on emotional intelligence, self-worth, and the importance of building a life rooted in self-respect. Every time she stood on stage, she carried the same message, that pain can be the foundation of power if handled with purpose. The applause never felt like validation, it felt like connection. Rohan eventually watched the documentary too. He didn't contact her afterward. Perhaps he finally understood that some actions can't be undone and that silence is sometimes the loudest response. Aarushi didn't think of him anymore. Her life had moved far beyond the boundaries of their past. On a quiet evening, standing by her balcony with the sunset painting the sky, Aarushi smiled faintly. Her journey had begun with betrayal but ended with peace. Her revenge had never been about vengeance, it was about evolution. She had proven, to herself and to the world, that true justice is living beautifully after being broken. Moral: revenge doesn't always mean vengeance. Sometimes, it's simply the art of walking away stronger than before.